on Gaza.
And let's now get more perspective on the bombing and the expanding front lines in this conflict with Patrick Henningsen, geopolitical analyst for the UK column. Mr. Henningsen, thank you very much for joining us. So ordinary Israelis have already shown their support for the action of their military in this war. Won't this blast only cement their position there?
Yes, the blast in Tel Aviv is going to codify Israeli public opinion even more so than it is already. But still, it's not clear who is responsible, completely clear who's responsible for the blast in Tel Aviv. There hasn't been an official group to step forward and take responsibility. So the timing of it is quite interesting, actually.
Yes, and where does this leave the chance of a ceasefire then?
Well, there was, we really have to look in the larger perspective of this recent conflict with Gaza. The ceasefire process was underway before this operation began, and as we had Gershon Baskin on your program a week ago saying that Israel decided it was not in their long-term strategic interests to pursue a truce because they believed it would strengthen Hamas in some way. So again, I think Israeli people are partly responsible for really torpedoing the peace process with the Hamas in Gaza.
All right, and if this was indeed Hamas's or its allies doing, what were they thinking? Isn't any Israeli reaction likely to be considerable and ultimately deadly?
Yeah, but we have to also look at this from another perspective. I mean, Gaza is probably the world's largest open prison with the most amount of people in a densely populated area. The poverty level is extreme. So this would be the equivalent of the prison warden clamping down on a prison riot or something to this effect. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. So to call it a military conflict is really out of proportion. It's not a military conflict. This is
right, and won't it ultimately be Palestinian civilians again paying the price?
Yes. Yes, yeah. Again, it's collective punishment on the part of the Palestinians, and this is a pattern we've seen over and over. This is caste-led 2.0. Mm-hmm. It's really no different from the first caste-led operation, only that the public opinion has swung more in the direction of the Palestinians, and I think that's an overall change in general opinions in places like Europe and the United States, which is something that Israel has to fend with.
We're also seeing the opinion on blogs and Twitter that Israel brought this latest bomb attack upon itself because of the ferocity of its attacks on Gaza. What do you make of this argument?
I think that's not really an argument that's going to go anywhere. Mm-hmm. But really, we have to look at the fact that this Israeli policy of suppressing Palestinians in the West Bank and in Gaza, it's an ideological and political cul-de-sac that the hard right in Israel has driven its own people into. So they really have no other direction. I mean, you can't ignore the fact that the living standards in Palestine are horrible. And also to have, in South Africa, the South African Air Force did not deploy F-16 jets to shoot missiles into townships. So this is an apartheid regime that is much more extreme even than in South Africa. And that's the historical perspective people need to really look at. This has no place in the 21st century. Right. This is really Israel stuck in the 20th century.
Patrick, very briefly, if you can, and if a ceasefire is put in place, what's changed? Sure, Hamas has been hurt, but has its support waned?
No, really look at the overall dynamics here. That because if you put pressure on any area or group, eventually it will radicalize. So the radicalization of Hamas really suits the hard right in Israel. It's a bit of a Hegelian dialectic. So, the people who want conflict with Palestinians and want to keep the status quo, they actually prefer to deal with a radical Hamas. To have a more gentle sort of political adversary in Palestine doesn't suit the hard right in Israel. So this is an equation that it has a very bad outcome in the end, but it serves the interests of a minority within the Israeli leadership.
Patrick Henningsen, geopolitical analyst for the UK column, Current Affairs website. Many thanks indeed.